Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the newest film from Sony Pictures Animation, and this movie follows Miles Morales, who in this film belongs in a reality where Peter Parker's Spider-Man has died, leaving the mantle of Spider-Man vacant. And as a result, he, along with Gwen Stacy and other Spider people from other dimensions, must come together to stop the Kingpin from destroying New York City. I am an enormous fan of Miles Morales. One of my favorite things that I own is a first printing issue of Ultimate Fallout #4, which fans of this character are sure to recognize as the first comic book appearance of Miles Morales. But since that comic and subsequent series that have followed Miles Morales, I have absolutely fallen in love with this character. And the Ultimate Spider-Man run that is written by Brian Michael Bendis, which you can actually see behind me right now, is one of my favorite Marvel comic book runs, period. And not only that, but I love Spider-Gwen or Spider-Woman or Ghost Spider or whatever you want to call her. I think she is such a great character. So naturally, seeing as this film has some of my favorite Marvel characters in it making their big screen debut, I could not be more excited for this movie. In fact, this was one of my most anticipated, if not my most anticipated movie of the year. And thankfully, this movie really delivers. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a heartfelt, funny, exciting, and wonderfully made film that captures incredibly well what makes Miles Morales such a great character. Initially, I was a bit apprehensive on whether this story was a good story to begin with Miles Morales. And obviously, seeing how a lot of audiences haven't been introduced to Miles Morales as Spider-Man, this event, this interdimensional event, usually takes place in the comics a bit later in Miles's career, never his first outing as Spider-Man. But this film utilizes Peter Parker as someone that Miles can look up to and learn what it means to put on the mask and to take up the mantle as Spider-Man and what that exactly entails. And despite my initial suspicion, it works incredibly well. In fact, I would not have done it any other way. In addition to that, the voice cast of this movie is absolutely incredible. There's not a single character in this movie that is miscast. Every single person is perfect. Shameik Moore, who you might recognize from Dope, voices Miles in this film, and he's probably someone that in the future, when I'm reading Miles Morales comic books, I'm going to be reading it in his voice because he does such a great job embodying what Miles Morales is. Something else I loved about this film is the way that it portrays this alternate reality version of Peter Parker, who in this movie is portrayed by Jake Johnson. And I thought it was so brilliant how this film is able to capture how Peter is often portrayed in the comic books as an adult who is having relationship issues. He has no money. He's kind of depressed. And I do think that Jake Johnson was able to embody that attitude perfectly. And going into this film, I did not expect to enjoy Peter Parker's role in this film as much as I did. In fact, he's a pretty crucial element to this story. I also really enjoyed Spider-Gwen. And in a film that deals with the convergence of a lot of different Spider people, she definitely is lower on the ranking as opposed to Peter and Miles, who take up a lot more screen time, but her role in this film I really did enjoy, and I am very excited to see what Sony Pictures Animation will do with this character in the future because I feel there is a lot of potential. And I do want to give credit where credit is due. Sony, more oftentimes than not, is terrible at giving audiences just enough so they are intrigued to see a sequel down the line. This movie works entirely on its own, which is so rare from Sony attempting to make Spider-Man movies, and I feel that they have so much material that they can build off of from what is established in this movie. And I was just incredibly surprised that Sony was able to do that well because they never do. I think another element of this film that is unique is how this movie is crafted visually. Animated superhero films that do have a theatrical release are somewhat rare, and I do think that the position that Sony was put into as to establish that this character was different than the one that is in the MCU, I think they played the hand that they were dealt incredibly well. In fact, I think this movie was able to use that to its advantage. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is one of the most gorgeous comic book movies that I I've ever seen. And much like something that I haven't seen since Sin City, this movie looks like you were reading a comic book. Oftentimes throughout the film, you can see thought bubbles of characters' inner monologue or sound effects. I could not get enough of how this film looks visually. If I do see this movie again, it will probably be in 3D or even IMAX 3D. In addition to that, the screenplay for this movie was written by Phil Lord, who wrote movies such as Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, as well as the Lego Movie. And just like those films, not only is this movie incredibly funny, but this film has so much heart at the center of it. And that's really what I feel is important. It's one thing to make audiences laugh, but to have a character and a story that emotionally resonates with audiences while also making us laugh, that's something truly special. If I'm going to pinpoint some negatives that I have with this movie, I do have some issues within the soundtrack of this film, especially how it is utilized throughout the movie. There are a couple more emotional moments that I feel are a bit compromised because of the soundtrack. I felt that these scenes didn't fit well with the rest of the movie, and it felt more like Sony was trying to sell some CDs as opposed to having these moments that deliver on an emotional level. But thankfully, other than that, there's not really that much to complain about with this film. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a movie that I think will really connect with audiences. This cast is terrific, the movie is funny, and it is able to establish a universe of films that I cannot wait to revisit. And seeing how this is a comic book movie, I thought I'd give you guys some comic book recommendations, and I will just do the top 3 Spider people in this movie because there are a lot of them. So of course I'm going to be doing Peter Parker and Miles Morales as well as Spider-Gwen. So if you guys like this movie, make sure you check out these comic book recommendations. For Miles Morales, I recommend that you check out the Ultimate Spider-Man run written by Brian Michael Bendis, as well as the Spider-Men arc that is also written by Brian Michael Bendis. If you like the Peter Parker that is portrayed in this movie, I recommend that you check out Ultimate Spider-Man, the Death of Spider-Man arc. And if you want to see how Peter Parker interacts with the other characters within the Spider-Man universe, I recommend checking out Dan Slott's Spider-Verse run. And I also recommend checking out Nick Spencer's current run of The Amazing Spider-Man. And if you saw this film and you are a fan of Spider-Gwen, make sure you check out the Spider-Gwen run written by Jason Latour. And if you want to see how Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy interact, I recommend that you check out Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen Sitting in a Tree. And if you want to get your hand on some rather new Spider-Gwen comics, I recommend that you check out Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider, which is written by Seanan McGuire. So thank you guys for watching today's video. I'm sorry that I've been a bit sparse on the channel recently. It is nearing the end of the semester, so this is probably one of the more busy times of the year, so I haven't been able to publish reviews as frequently as I would like to. However, if you do want to see some of my thoughts on movies like Wreck-It Ralph as well as Creed 2 and some others, you can follow me on letterboxd.com and you can see all of my ratings of movies that have come out recently as well as some older films that I've been watching. But once again guys, thank you for watching today. I hope you liked today's video, and if you did, you can click on the link down below and subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. You guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.